Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, and today's guest is someone who knows how to turn your passion into purpose while building a true financial freedom. Our guest is a seasoned investor, an expert in organized system psychology with a PhD. We got a doctor, ladies and gentlemen, in hand. He has empowered countless professionals to break free from the daily grind and pursue their passion while creating lasting wealth. Having rebuilt his own finances future after a significant loss, our guest now leads the Streams to Impact program and hosts the Stream to Impact podcast, another amazing podcast where he shares his unique blueprint for passive investing and wealth creation. If you ever wonder how to align your life's purpose with financial freedom, today's episode is for you. Whether you're a professional, an entrepreneur, or someone looking to make a real impact in the world while securing your future, our guest is here to share his wisdom and inspire you to take action towards the next step, which is prosperity and purpose. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to our guest, Dr. Alan Lomax. Alan, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, it is wonderful to be with you, and thank you for that wonderful and dynamic introduction. I feel better already. I bet you hear that all the time, don't you?
I may hear it once or twice, but I always love hearing it, knowing that I'm making my guests feel better about being on the podcast. And I always enjoy that little pun of my name. But thank you so much for being here. And we're going to just jump right into it. What made you decide to venture into the world of entrepreneurship instead of maybe staying in the academic or becoming just a 9-to-5er?
Well, I love what I'm doing in academia. I still do it today. I guess I would say the reason I ventured into entrepreneurism was because I'm greedy. I wanted more. I mean, academia, it's a privileged profession, and I do not take that for granted. Lots and lots of benefits being able to be in academia. Um, but like any salary position, there is a limit uh, to uh, to the finances. You're only going to have so much in a paycheck, and no matter how good you are, no matter how great you are, it's not going to make any difference. Your salary is set, and that's what it's going to be. And I wanted more for myself and my family, and wanted to leave a legacy. So that's why I went into it. And of course, I realized after a while, after being into it, that really is a pretty futile uh, uh, direction. That it has to be more than that. And so, what really continues to drive me is uh, that I can help others develop their wealth. And so that is what we have developed with Streams of Impact is actually a program to help others, other professionals, whether they're in academia, whether they're in the health profession, whether they're architects, engineers, or even if they're in the trades, we can help others to develop wealth. But my big why is really the establishment of a foundation for the welfare and the well-being of horses and the benefit of horses to benefit humans as well. So that's the big why there.
Love that. I'm going to ask, did you happen to grow up on a farm with horses? That's why you have a love of them? Or were horses just something you saw and you're like, I love these beautiful beasts?
Well, I have always loved horses. I did not grow up on a farm. However, I did live in a rural community, and I knew a lot of people who had horses, and so I got to spend a fair amount of time around horses, not nearly as much as I wanted. And I did have, when I was in high school, I did have a horse. He was a found horse, and he was old and arthritic, but at least I did have a horse. I didn't really get into horses of my own until I was really in my mid 50s, and I was turning about 54, and I'm going, my gosh, if I want horses in my life, I better get to it. And so I did. And I've had horses ever since.
I love that. I love horses. They're just so gorgeous to look at, and the power that they have is insane, and also the speed. They're just so wild and free. And I think they're maybe the best animal to compare to entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs
Yeah.
are so powerful, so beautiful, because we are the backbone of society. And horses, if we didn't have horses, we wouldn't really have a great society, because we wouldn't be able to travel. We have horsepower for our cars, so we know how important horses are. So I love to hear that you're going to help horses and make them a better life, because we need them. We
Yes.
don't just need to use them and then throw them to the glue factory, because that's not fair. These animals help us so much. So I love hearing that you also have that as your why. When did you just start figuring out these streams of wealth? Like, how did you come up with the idea to begin? Because you're coming at it with from an academic point of view. You have an intellect that not all entrepreneurs have. All entrepreneurs are specialties in their own aspect, but you got a doctorate and you're coming into the entrepreneurial space. How did you figure out that system? Did you do it in an academic sort of way, or was it just a hodgepodge and then all of a sudden it started working?
Well, it was kind of a hodgepodge. And I started off investing in single family properties, which I think a lot of people do who are investing in real estate because, well, I don't know, we purchase our own homes. It seems easy to do that. We understand the purchase and the mortgage processes. And so why not? So that's where I started. And I actually did what they call house hacking today. I purchased a very large single family home and broke it down into a triplex. I did that again and again, and I bought a small mobile home park. And all of that was really good and fine until 2008. And 2008 crash hit, and I lost everything. I even lost my job. There were so many cutbacks in academia at that point in time, and I lost a job I loved, and I lost a considerable amount of the wealth that I had grown and developed. Well, these were definitely, definitely dark times. I can tell you that they were. So I had a lot of time for contemplation and really looking at and evaluating the world of investing and real estate, and and I knew you could make a lot of money in real estate. I had done that, so I knew it was very possible to do that. But as I started looking around at the various different segments of real estate and looking at other real estate investors, and really this time actually really getting an education, I was just kind of going by the seat of my pants. And uh, as I got educated, got mentors, looked around, I realized that there's a much better way to actually scale your wealth development, and that is through commercial real estate investments. And so since that time, that is what I have been doing is investing in commercial real estate investing. And uh, and there's there's five reasons that I invest in real estate, and it is because it is the ideal investment. So I guess actually there's six. It's the ideal investment, and ideal is a mnemonic for the five things that make real estate investing the ideal investment. First of all, it is an investment that generates cash flow. You invest in it and you start getting cash flow on a regular basis, generally on a quarterly basis. But that is just the beginning of that. The second aspect of that is the D, it is depreciation. With depreciation, we get a ton of tax write off benefits and reduce our tax liability. And since I've been investing in real estate, even with my salary, which I have a good salary as a university professor, but I don't generally pay federal or state income taxes because of the depreciation from my real estate investments. And the second is equity. And those of you who own your home, you know what the equity is. That's the difference between what you owe and what the value of your property is. And the studies have indicated that over the last 100 years, that you can count on every 10 years, your property is on average going to that equity is going to increase about 4% per year. So over a 4 to 5 year hold period, it's going to appreciate anywhere from 20 to 25 percent. And so that's the growth in your natural growth in equity. And then the A is the appreciation. And that's where the real value comes in. Of course, there's the natural appreciation just over the whole period of the time, but we look for properties that we force appreciate. In other words, we make improvements on them, or we make improvements in the management and cut down the expenses on that. Unlike residential properties that are valued based upon your next door neighbor's value when they sell their house, in commercial real estate, they're valued solely and strictly upon the net operating income. So, how much is this apartment complex generating? And that's where the value of that property comes in. And so we can force appreciate that in a couple of ways. And then finally, the last thing is leverage. And uh, even though we are investing our own capital, it is about a 30 to 70 ratio there. We're investing about 30% in any particular deal, but we're getting returns on 100% of that. We're getting depreciation on 100% of that. We're getting the equity growth on 100% of that property. And I know of no other investment where you can get all five of those things all at once. So that's ongoing income, depreciation, equity, uh, uh, appreciation, and leverage. And it makes it the ideal investment. And so that's why I invest in it. And what your question was, how do we make how did that come about developing those streams? So that's a long way
Yeah.
of going about that. Well, so I found my way into this, and then I started investing in it. And of course, we set up syndications. And so the syndication, of course, is that overall system. It generally is an LLC, and that is the overall system structure for each and every property that we go into. Well, none of us have sufficient capital to bring down 100 to 200 to 300 unit complex. So we need investors for that. And so that's where the streams of income come into that. We invite passive investors into each and every one of our properties and and so we've set up the system so that passive investors can easily come into our offerings. And the entire system is actually an educational process because if you've never done it before, it can be frightening and scary. And you need to know what you're doing if you're going to invest in commercial real estate. The same is true of the stock market. If you're really going to make money in the stock market, you need to know what you're doing in the stock market as well. It's just not my area of expertise. So that whole entire system is a system of education. And then we have developed over the years, I've developed network of operators who are constantly bringing new properties to the foreground. And so the system is education, and then the opportunities is the network that we have to the people who come into our membership. And and so we're continuously having investment opportunities. So I don't know, did that answer your
That
question?
was a more detailed answer than I expected, Alan, and I appreciate it because it broke down all obviously your blueprint when you're looking at something, why commercial real estate is, like you said, the ideal investment, because it hits all those key points, which I never even thought about ever, because I only know about investing in the stock market, and real estate I never knew about. Commercial real estate, because I only thought, oh, big corporations handle that, and us little people can only play with the residential and maybe a couple, unit apartments. Whereas I never knew that we could go into the big corporate places and really make, that's where the big money is. Um, how long did it take you to create that blueprint of a stream of wealth, like the idea, in essence, the ideal investment blueprint? How long did that take you to conceptualize and come up with it?
Well, I guess really, in totality, I would say probably about 4 years. I mean, it was kind of putting it together piece by piece. I was doing investing on my own, and then in 2020, actually the start of the pandemic, I started my podcast. And so my podcast was really the start of the development of this network. And then once I had this network in place, and I was doing investing, uh, and uh, and getting to know all kinds of syndicators. And then it was after a couple of years of that, then I realized, well, I can put together a system here where I can bring a lot of people into this, because Phil, you're not the only one with that misconception. I mean, that's probably one of the largest myths out there that keep people from investing in real estate, is that myth that we think we have to be millionaires. And and that's far from the case, because there are these opportunities for people like yourself who are entrepreneurs, who are deeply involved in their entrepreneurial pursuits, and they find fulfillment in that, and that's what they want to do with their lives. But they also want to grow their wealth, and we need multiple streams of wealth development. If we're relying on one source of wealth development, we're setting ourselves up uh, for disaster, because life's uncertain
Yeah.
in all kinds of ways. But yes, anyone who uh, generally speaking, the minimum investment is $50,000. Some people go, wow, I don't have $50,000. Most people who have been entrepreneurs or professionals for at least 5 years, they have $50,000. They just aren't aware of it. You've probably got $50,000 in equity in your home. You may have life insurance policies that you can borrow against. You probably got some stock investments, maybe some bonds, maybe some CDs, um, and uh, and perhaps you've already got a retirement account, an IRA or a 401k, and you can self-direct those. So chances are you probably got the $50,000, and we can help you find ways to put those to work so that they are earning uh, a lot more than what they are currently for you.
I love that. And so I want to talk about that, because you specialize with professionals, and you're you're prioritizing long-term wealth building strategies, and without sacrificing those short-term successes. or their personal well-being. How do you go about doing it in this fast-paced world that we're currently in that's constantly changing?
Well, uh, I love that question because even though I certainly am working with people to develop their financial wealth, uh, I'm just as interested in their overall psychological and emotional well-being. And the first session that we have in our educational program is a session that we are looking at who they are as an individual, what are their core values, and what is their vision, what is their big why. And we spend our whole entire first session, a good 90 minutes, looking at that. We do assessments, personality assessments, and interest assessments, and strength interests, and put that all together. And we help them to develop a life plan, not just a financial plan. And with that in place, then every investment opportunity that comes up, we go back to that plan and we ask that question: is this the right investment for you at this particular time? And is it going to support your core values? Is it going to lead you towards attaining that ultimate vision that you have for yourself? So, uh, in this fast-paced world, it is uh, it is it is important to take time to slow down and really look at those core values and that particular vision. And I mean, that's what I love about horses. That's where I spend my meditation time, is with horses.
I love that. Speaking of meditation time, which is something that is common for a lot of entrepreneurs when they're investing in themselves, to take that moment to just calm down, meditate, get connected with their true self. What other aspects of investing in yourself do you do to make sure that you become the best version of yourself?
Well, continuous education through reading, seminars, webinars, podcasts, uh, but uh, but I don't know. I think really the best things I do is the time that I get to spend with horses. And now I'll tell you a story. Uh, the A friend of mine recently acquired a new horse. Her intention was she wanted a rocking chair horse, in other words, a horse that she could just get on and it would placidly do exactly what she wanted to do. Well, it turns out this horse, she was buying a quarter horse, which they generally have a pretty placid personality. Well, this horse was quarter horse. At least he was about half quarter horse. The other half is thoroughbred. And sure enough, he is more the thoroughbred than he is the quarter horse. And he is not the rocking chair horse that she wanted. And so she was quite intimidated and very uncertain as to what to do. And this horse, he was about 10 years old. He had a really traumatic life experience. He was uh, they they showed him in dressage and other different kinds of events, and I know that they used cruel techniques in working with him. I know they used cruel bits, probably strapped his head down with a martingale. Um, and so here's this traumatized horse. She's tried to put a bridle on him. He would not allow it. He reared up, backed up, threw his head up, and just refused to let anyone touch his head. So the first thing that I did the first time I went out with him, I just stood with him and just in a quiet meditative state, just stood with him for about 20 minutes. And that tension started leaving his body. He dropped his neck, he dropped his head, and I slipped a bridle on him with no training, no pressure, no nothing. And uh, and I think that, I mean, that is what I do for myself. I mean, that is extraordinarily rewarding for me when I can approach uh, a traumatized, abused animal, and just in a few minutes of quiet meditation, we can change that whole scene for the horse. And I mean, that's not the end of the story. We've continued working with him, of course, he, but you can see from that how powerful quietness is, and you can illustrate that with a horse. But the same thing is true of we as people. When we can find those quiet places within ourselves, we are going to connect with the essence of who we are, and we're going to know and understand ourselves, and we're going to make better decisions because of that.
I love that. I love how you illustrated it with the story of just taking our time and just being at peace, that we can overcome any trauma that we have and be able to move forward in our goals. I think that's an impressive story to share. And I thank you very much for sharing that. If I snap my fingers and we're 10 years in the future, Alan, you're probably just retired, riding your horses into the background and then just enjoying life with your horses. But what kind of legacy would you want to leave? I know 10 years is probably a little sooner for thinking about really leaving your legacy, but where do you want your legacy to be in 10 years?
Well, I definitely, um, in 10 years, we'll definitely have the foundation very well established. We will be providing places for horses, and the foundation will not only be for funding my place, but funding these types of facilities really all across the world, and bringing people together where they can really appreciate the nature of the horse. But really, more importantly, they can find themselves and their places, and do so in a natural setting, in a wild setting, with the spirit of the horse. And I mean, this is my legacy, and I want it to be my legacy. And the reason is because I had a lot of trauma. I was in, uh, just a bit about me, uh, in the seventh grade. My family and I were sitting around a black and white television. Uh, that's not because we were just poor. That's because the kind of televisions you had back then. and and there was only one screen in the whole entire house. And on the television came this special on homosexuality. That was the first time in my life I had heard the term homosexuality. Well, as they were interviewing the people, they had their faces smudged and their identities concealed, and so it was this dark and black picture of what homosexuality is. And at the same time that they were telling these stories, I knew immediately that that was me that they were talking about. Well, believe me, that was not rainbows and unicorns. It was like 1,000 ton of bricks. And I went into, uh, I had thoughts of suicide, and I went into deep depressions, and stayed in that for actually many years because I was very closeted. I shared that absolutely with nobody. On top of that, I'm dyslexic, and back in those days, there was no such diagnosis as dyslexia. You were just stupid. And so I had these two things going into junior high and high school, and struggled a great deal. I did graduate, obviously, went on to college, graduated college, and got married. And after several years of uh, dead end jobs, my wife had enough of it, and more insights than I had, and ended the marriage. And I thought that was the end of my life. Actually, as I look back on it, I often say that was the worst day of my life, and it was also the very best day of my life. It was like a light bulb went on. I went into therapy and came out of a closet bigger than a Kardashian's, and and went back to school, got my master's, secured a university counseling job, and then completed my PhD, and found tremendous satisfaction in the work of my calling, and then started investing in real estate, and ultimately ended up where I am today with personal, emotional, psychological, and financial fulfillment. And that's my legacy. I want everyone to find that for themselves.
Oh, I love that. That's Thank you very much for sharing that story. Um, it it I know it's going to resonate with my audience, or at least some parts of my audience, about having something that they keep closed and hidden from the world, and how it can end up hurting you throughout your life. So I thank you very much for sharing that. um, we are coming to the end, which I hate, because I know there's at least another 1,000 stories that you can share of your journey in entrepreneurship, but also your journey in your life. However, I want to go back to when you were 10. I have your 10-year-old self right here, bustle of energy, a nice kid. What is one piece of advice you would love to be able to hand back to your 10-year-old self? Maybe not to make their life super easy, because we understand the struggles make us who we are, but to give them a leg up, if you will, in life.
Well, this is a phrase from a song, but it is what I wish somebody had told me, and at 10 years old, is that I am put on this earth as I am, and I am born with my own special blessings, and live your life genuinely.
I love that. That is so good. And that's not only good for 10-year-olds, it's good for 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds as well. Alan, I thank you so much for that. I'm going to jump off stage, internalize that piece of advice. I want you to let my audience know where they can connect with you, where they can listen to your podcast that we even didn't even touch on, which means you have to come back and we have to talk about your podcast. But Alan, please let my audience know where they can connect with you, and they can take their lives and create these streams of income.
Well, thank you, Phil, for asking that. The podcast is Streams to Income, and you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on all of the podcast channels. And I have a free gift for everyone, and you can go to my website. We've talked about horses. My website is steedtalker.com. That's Steed Talker Capital, and you can find it at steedtalker.com. And the free gift is a training video on how you can get into the ideal investment. And all you have to do is go to steedtalker.com/passive, and there you'll find a link to that video. Been wonderful being with you today. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much.
Alan, I thank you so much for coming here, sharing those two amazing stories, one about the horse, but also about your discovery of who you are as an individual to be able to live your life. I thank you so much for that. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, it's been wonderful being with you, Phil. Wonderful show.
Thank you. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to get that free gift from Alan. The links will be all there, and connect with him. I thank you so much for listening. Thanks again to Dr. Alan Lomax for being here. And remember to always invest in yourself.